All right. And we're live.
We're live.
Welcome to the Deal Champs podcast. We got one question for you. Dino, do you have big tits?
He was serious.
Only the biggest, baby. you went for it?
I thought we were joking, and then he
pre-live. You went for it?
We have 0 people watching right now. That was good. Hopefully we'll catch.
I'll rip my shirt off in the middle of the podcast to show my chest off.
But welcome to the Deal Champs podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. First off, our goal and mission as Deal Champs is to empower and inspire listeners by highlighting real-life deals from people across the nation. Right? We're bringing on all sorts of different people. A lot of these people, it's their first deals. We're bringing on other people who've done other bigger deals. Those are really inspiring for other people. We'll also be doing interviews with some of the top entrepreneurs and experts in our space. Luckily, we've been around for a while, so we know some of the best people in the country, honestly, and in the industry who can come on and share all of their expertise. Our entire aim is to provide you valuable insights and actionable tips to help our audience to achieve their own business financial goals. But first, we do this all for free. So please, please, please go like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, go hit that like and subscribe button. If you're on the podcast, go give us a 5-star review and share it with your friends on social media. StreamYard. At everybody in all your groups. Share it to your groups right now if you're watching live. If you are watching live, please, please, please tell us where you're from. And then go to streamyard.com/Facebook if you're watching this on Facebook so we can see who is actually commenting. And then don't forget submit your deal. Dino, do you have that link for us?
Don't have the link. We don't have. I want to put it on a special website that people can go to that's easy. It's some big long Google form link right now, so it's not sexy to share, but I'll post it in all the Facebook and YouTube stuff after. That way, if someone's watching it, you guys can submit your deal.
Awesome. And then last thing, my name is Stratton Brown. I will be your moderator today. We have the sexy Dean Rogers and the great bearded man, Jason Pritchard. Dino, do a quick introduction for yourself.
What's up, guys? Dean Rogers, transitioned from the NFL to real estate investor. At this point, made many mistakes over the years, but glad to say that we're doing 100 deals a year now. Done millions of dollars in revenue. Got a 7-figure business there. Got an almost 8-figure rental portfolio, and just super passionate about working with other people, coaching students now, and just excited for the future, man. Lots of great stuff.
Hey guys, I'm Jason Pritchard, your other co-host. I was in corporate America for 15 years, transitioned over to real estate full-time about 8 years ago. We fix and flip, we wholesale deals, we buy rental properties. Real estate has absolutely changed the trajectory of my life and my family's life. And I think our goal with the podcast and my individual goal is to try to transfer as many of the skills and all the things that we've learned over the last years to as many of you guys watching, so you guys can find the same impact that we've had. So hopefully you guys get value from the podcast. Like, share, and subscribe. One bit of housekeeping. We are having our monthly meetup this coming Thursday in Visalia at 5:30. I don't know if we have the link dialed up for that, but we want to get you as many of you guys out there as we can. We're doing one free monthly event every single month in the Central Valley. So this one's coming up. We'd love to see you guys. We're going to be talking about private lending and spending some time really networking and building relationships with you guys.
Yeah, for anybody who's watching this live or soon after, wants to go to the event, you can go on Facebook to Central California Real Estate Investing Group. That's the meetup group that's hosting this event. You'll see the event there. Make sure to RSVP. If you miss this one, make sure to come to the next one. We're putting these on all throughout the year, and the power of networking is like no other. We're going to talk about it at this next event and how we've been able to raise money because of it. So we want to see you there. We want to network with you. We want to get to know you. So we hope to see you there soon.
And then I'll do my own quick introduction. My name's Stratton Brown. We have a 7-figure virtual assistant company. I actually have a 7-figure real estate portfolio. That's pretty crazy. So I have a 7-figure real estate portfolio.
You
pretty
definitely
proud of that.
Yeah.
Right?
That's sick.
So I have a 7-figure real estate portfolio. We wholesale a couple of houses a month, and then we own a marketing company. But I think today's subject is one that nobody really talks about, because all of us who get into the business, right, we're the visionaries. Dino, you're more of a systems guy. I've had to become a systems guy. But all of us, bro, we hop in, do it off of Google Sheets and a notepad and just get shit done. But there's no real systems in the business, right? And the only way we actually get true time freedom is by creating systems and processes and hiring people, or maybe not hiring people, but having really good systems in place so we don't have to be at our computer all day, on the phone all day, all those other things. Because we get into this for time freedom, right? You get into this so you have an open calendar, you can go to Legoland, right? I mean, the other day, me and Jason were on the phone with Dino while he was at Legoland with his kids. Right.
I still got on our Monday meeting talking about meetups and events and stuff like that. And, you know, I'm watching my kids drive around in cars and riding rides and, you know, throwing balls at them and stuff. Like, we're having a good time.
Exactly. And Jason gets to go on vacations all the time. I travel all the time. And it's all because we actually have systems in our business, and the business is set up the right way. And as you're building it, you build it intentionally. Right? You don't want to build a prison. And I get this from my mentors all the time. Build it how you want it to be. Just because you hear some dude on a podcast who's doing 800 deals a year does not mean you need to build your business that way. Right? Do you actually want, me, Dean, and Jason have all talked about this. I don't even want an office. Right?
No.
We've talked about it several different times. Like, do we want to go build this out? We could go do this. But does that create the lifestyle that we want? And that goes into systems.
Yep.
I think for me, guys, and I think the biggest issue, most people struggle with this, and you said it, Strat, is that they don't have clarity on what you want. And when you're setting a goal, especially if you're building a business, right, you have to understand what you want that business to do for you. So I think if you're not being very clear with yourself and intentional about how you want the business to serve you, all you're going to be doing is just serving the business nonstop. And I think a lot of us probably fell down that same trap. I know I did at the beginning, because I was running around like crazy. Yep. I'm one of those guys where I am more of a visionary than an integrator, and I just do. And we have that muscle to just go and hustle. I know we've talked about that on different episodes of this podcast. And you're better off implementing the systems at the beginning, and you've got to start with clarity first. Otherwise, you're just going to be running around in circles.
Yeah. For anybody watching this, if you guys have specific questions about a certain something in your business, about a specific system or process, how you're doing something, we want to see in the chats. We want to see your questions so we can address some of those. But just to kind of continue on that talk track. So when it comes to systems, I think a lot of people, when they're getting started out, the people that push through and they just figure it out, right? There's going to be some people that just fall off. They give up, they give up and they quit. But the people who persevere and push through, they're working that hustle muscle. They're learning the skills, and you might not realize it. I kind of reflected on this before we did this. You're probably following a certain system or a combination of different systems and processes, right? If you're getting good at talking to sellers, you're probably following a script or some sort of sales process that you learned off of YouTube, that you learned from a coach or mentor that you hired. You don't just randomly pick up the phone and talk to a seller and just wing it. Usually, if you've gotten that far, you saw something on YouTube, or you took some training or went to a class and you actually learned a system. You might not have known that, but you learned a process to go through that sales process. And I think what happens to a lot of us is we'll learn all these different systems without knowing it. We haven't documented or formulated anything, and it's just us. We're just going through it over and over and over again. And the reason we're not able to create that time freedom, if we're talking and focusing on time freedom, is because we haven't removed ourselves from any of those processes. And we're stuck in each and every one. We're wearing every single hat. So the quicker every business has grown to be something big, they didn't just wear all the hats because they were the smartest person and they knew they could do it best. They went and either found someone as a temporary, person to fill that need, or they went and found someone smarter and better if they could afford to pay for that talent. But eventually you have to remove yourself from certain seats in order to create the time freedom. Or like you said at the beginning, Stratton, you will create your own prison. right? I know when we were, me and my partner Lewis, when we were cranking deals and it was just him and I was taking the phone calls at dinner, at night when I'm putting my kids to bed. It didn't matter. I was answering the phone. If I was just woke up and a seller called me at 6 a.m. in the morning, because that's what their time schedule was, I was picking up the phone and answering anytime I could, because that's when business was calling. And I was the one responsible for everything. So it wasn't until I finally had the courage to hire people that things started changing.
I heard you use a couple different words, and I see this a lot, Dean: systems and processes, right? And so for our company, the way that we try to simplify it is the process is the step-by-step. Here's how you actually do it, right? So that's me and a VA, or just me at the beginning, literally writing down, you open the web browser and you type this web address in, then you click here, then you put the address in, then you hit this button, and that you actually have to write the whole process out step by step. And that can be as simple as just using a Google Doc. Like at the beginning, everything that we had was all on a Google Doc. And then the system, I think, is what you integrate that process into. So whether that's a CRM or that's a data software like Property Radar or Propstream, so the system for us is what you actually use to facilitate the process. So I think you need to get clarity on how do those steps work. And then when you're ready to hire out, it's very easy to pinpoint on that Google Doc, like, hey, this person, your responsibility is to do steps 1 through 5 and 7 through 10 on here. So that way it's very clear. So once that process is built out, it's easy to delegate, and then you can train on the system. So I think if you look at it through that lens, because I think Butler made a comment on there, and I'm sure you guys can throw it up. All I hear is systems. What do I refer to? It can be confusing at the beginning. And I know it was confusing for me. So that's the way like my brain, that worked for me. And I think if you're struggling with this at home, guys, think about it like that. The process are your step-by-step instructions, and the system is going to be whatever software program or actual system you're going to use to implement it. And then you put those two things together.
Exactly. And so an easy way, guys, is Google Docs and Loom. And so an easy way as you're growing, and I got this from Trevor Mock, write down everything you don't like doing every day. Record all of that on Loom. Be very, very detailed. And then that's still a process and a system right there. Someone else, you can send that to them like, hey, get it done right here. And that could be just a VA that's an hour a day. You don't need to hire on someone 40 hours a week. Like, hey, I just need you to get this done once a week. You send it to them. You tell them to do it. You say, hey, send me back the results. You check it. It's good. It's good. Awesome. Hey, that's a system. That is still a system that you've created that is done. And the easiest way to do it is with Loom, I have found. Especially at the beginning, you're running around, you're doing stuff like, oh, no one else can do it as good as me. Just create a Loom video. And the best thing that I've ever heard is if someone can get it done as much as 80% as you, that is plenty good to offload to someone else.
And the reason why Loom works really well too, Stratton, to piggyback off what you're saying, is it can be the start of your company's training library, because all you need to do is then take that video and upload it into your Google Drive, give it to your VA. Your VA can transcribe the steps. So that way you have a written document and an SOP that you can share with other people. Then you've got the video that goes on top of it. And then you just use that for any future employees if you happen to promote the person that's doing that job, or you lose them and you've got to replace them with somebody else.
And we don't even do documents. We only do videos. And then if anything ever changes, the person who's in charge of that records a new video, and then that's the new video. Like you don't really have to do documents. It doesn't have to be a ton, especially like, let's say you have a text messaging system in operation. That should really only be videos, because texting is changing every day.
Yeah.
Right. And that way it's not eating up a bunch of your time.
Shout out to you, Stratton.
Hey.
Adam said Loom was a game changer. Man, Loom is such an easy concept. I mean, think about, capturing videos on Zoom or different things like that. Loom is just so easy because it's just built into your browser. You just say record, and you can just start capturing your screen and jumping around doing everything. And then it's just a link you share. And you can share that easily across many different platforms as quickly as possible. So, it's a great tool to use for sure.
Thank you, Adam. Loom, what is another easy way for people to set up an actual system? I think a sales system actually following a script at the beginning. And this is having a legit sales script that you can walk sellers through. And eventually you're going to outgrow that. But it goes into, all right, did we gather all the information that we need? And did we ask all the questions? And did we set it up the right way? And Jason, I think you're the best salesman out of all of us. I'm not going to lie, because you did it for a while. And so how did you train up your systems and all that when you were doing it for the corporate?
That was hard for me, man. And the reason why I struggled with that strat is because I held on to the sales piece of the business, the acquisitions piece of the business for so long, because I do have a talent for it. I also enjoy doing it. There's a part of me deep down that enjoys doing it. So that was one of the things that I delegated later on in the process for me, right? So I think if we go all the way to the beginning, especially for people that are struggling finding freedom in their business, you've got to start with the end in mind and go all the way to the front end, right? So I think this is a good exercise for everybody that's listening on this call. Like for us, and I'll ask you guys, what do you think if you're starting out and let's say you're a one-man or a one-woman show and you're doing everything on your own, what do you think are the best systems to start with in order to start freeing up your time? Like, what are the things that you guys did at first? Because for me, sales was last. I did that, not even, maybe a couple years ago. I was still heavy in acquisitions in the business until a couple years ago. And I'll give you my insight on that. But what were some of the things that you guys did first? I know what I did, but I'm curious to hear your guys' experience.
Yeah, for me, I mean, sales without question is the first and probably most important skill and system to develop. Because think about it, if you're following a script and a good script from somebody who, is well recognized, clearly, very successful with what they're doing and doing a lot of good deals, chances are they have a good script. That script is going to fill the void of a lack of skill. It's going to help support that lack of skill that you just haven't developed, right? It takes time to develop the skill and to get the listening skills. That's one of the biggest sales skills, is actually listening to what they're saying
hitting them.
And having the right question at that moment, right? If you just follow a script and they say something that's really important and key that you need to spend more time on, you might not be skilled enough to recognize that. And you're going to capture most of what you need through the script. So that's going to help support you. But when you finally get to the point where you've developed your skills and you can listen and be in tune with what's going on and be flexible and adapt and go off script, then that's when you get really dynamic and really good at sales. Sales was by far my biggest area of success and where I was the best at, while also being responsible for figuring out how to run the business and the systems. I mean, I taught myself freaking how to do accounting and how to use QuickBooks and do all that kind of crap because I had to. Like, no one else was going to do it. My partner, God love him, the furthest thing from his skill set. So I taught myself all that stuff. So marketing and sales were my bread and butter. That's what I did. Lewis, my partner, he ran all of our flips and managed all our projects. And he was the boots on the ground, the area expertise, right? He's been in the business longer than me. He could identify the deal just by looking at it. And that's the piece that really helped me at the beginning. So sales was the first thing that I hired at the same time. It was within like a month of hiring office manager, right? We had all this paperwork, all these flips, writing checks to contractors all the time. It was becoming way too much. And my partner is not organized enough to be managing, paying contractors, doing all that stuff. So we had hired an office manager and sales guy at the same time because it was too much. My phone was nonstop ringing. Enough was enough. And it's like, all right, we got enough deals. We got enough money. Like at some point you got to let go. And as much as I love sales and it was the baby to me, because that's where you that's where you make the most amount of money is when you buy it, right? So it's the hardest thing to give away. But I knew I needed, in order to grow the business, I needed to focus on working on the business and remove myself. So I hired sales and office manager at the same time. And I have to admit, I was terrified of doing it because I knew how important it was. But, I trusted the process and went through it and really had to focus on understanding what my own system was because it was just me. It was all in my head. And I had to really challenge myself And I still challenge myself to this day of actually documenting exactly what we're doing and what works so that others can repeat it that aren't at the same skill level.
I think for me, the big one was initially marketing, because I was like you, Dean. I was doing all of the sales, and I had continued to do the sales for a long time. But I found my business started to become inconsistent because I always was answering the calls. I was going on the appointments. But as we started doing more deals, we were very flip heavy at the beginning. So I was project managing. I was cutting checks to the contractors. I was doing the accounting, all the back end stuff. And I would notice my deal flow would always kind of be up and down because I wasn't consistent with my marketing. My direct mail wasn't going out as consistently as it should have. All the stuff that I was doing to generate leads coming in, I was not doing that consistently. And so I hired a VA. That was the very first hire that I ever made, was a VA to help me pull like my probate leads, all the public records, code enforcement, get my direct mail sent out, everything that we were doing to get leads coming in. So I heard you say something, Dean, my phone was ringing off the hook. I think you've got to get to a space before you can hire a sales guy where you're like Dean, where your phone is ringing off the hook. Because if your sales guy doesn't have leads to work, then they're just going to be sitting around not doing anything. And so for me, I systematized at the very top of the funnel. When are the leads going to come in? And let me try to hand some of that stuff out, right? I stayed in that sales role for a little bit longer, it sounds like, than Dean did, but I needed help with all the admin stuff. I mean, I had 4 or 5 flips going at all times. I was doing all the bookkeeping on my own and accounting stuff on my own. I owned like 12 or 13 rentals at that point too. So I was self-managing all those rental properties. I was putting tenants in, I was turning them. I was doing everything. And it just reached a point where I couldn't function anymore. So I had a couple of VAs doing one-off tasks like you were saying, Stratton. I didn't hire somebody full-time. I was just like, I need you to do these tasks a couple times a week for me. And I would just pay them a flat fee. And then eventually I hired a full-time person that was like a full-time administrative assistant. And I handed them all of my admin work. And those two things really took a lot off my plate. And then I stayed in the sales seat for a long time. And then I eventually started building that out. And I started training for that. I hired somebody to do that. And we eventually got traction in that area. And I've been able to pull myself out from that.
Same for me, dude. It was all admin at the beginning. I was like, all right, so who's going to pull my lists? Who's going to manage our dialers? Who's going to set up everything? And then I didn't really leave the sales seat. I mean, it was the last for me too, because I think that's the most important thing. And that, let's say if they're 80% as good as you, that may not be enough at the beginning, right? Because that 20% is a lot of money at the beginning. And so if you are not, let's say, sales oriented, then I would find a partner at the beginning, like who's like a killer and like you can be that operator on the back end. But for me, it was same thing as Jason, someone who was pulling lists, someone who was putting them in place. And she texted for me as well. And then I was still cold calling. I still cold called for a while I had other cold callers going just so we could keep getting more lead flow. And then I was on the phone. And then my next hire was a leads manager. And that's what took a lot of time off my plate, because you'll get to a point where you have so many leads that you're following up with to where you're going to get energy burnout.
Yep.
And you're going to let something slip through. And my biggest story on this is there was some chick who I got tired of. We fired our leads manager. We were hiring on a new one. She slipped through, and Dean and Michael Butler locked it up, and they made $80,000. And we were following up with her, and we fucking missed it.
Yeah.
And that comes from like the sales fatigue, right? Of like, oh, well, this, bro, they're all gonna sell. It's just not today. Is like the biggest thing, right? So you need to have a system in place, whether it's through drips or a leads manager or both, who's just in front of that person, checking in every 30 days.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to kind of slowly do it, where once your database gets big enough and you're good at closing, the person in the closer's role doesn't necessarily need to be the person that's working and trying to revive the dead leads all the time, right?
No.
And I do think you can kind of quickly hire somebody virtually at a reasonable cost to be that person that just works through your database, calls and follows up with cold or colder leads in the system and revives those and then passes those to you, right? So then that way you're just focusing on closing, right? And so that's kind of how we structured it at the beginning. Yeah.
That's what I set up at the beginning. I only had to work like a couple hours a day.
Yeah.
Right? Because like my leads managers would just tee it up like, hey, you got like 3 calls today. I was like, sweet. Like, what else can I build? And so that took a lot off my plate.
We had a few of those same experiences that you had, where you had deals where it's like, damn, I knew that I had good rapport with that seller and we just missed it because we didn't follow up, and I would see it get blasted out by somebody else. And I was like, damn, dude, we missed an opportunity there.
Exactly.
And it only takes enough of those before you're like, we're just going to have, this is just going to keep happening, or I'm going to have to start operating differently. You know what I mean? And I think it like, for me, all the big systems that we've integrated and all the big changes that we've made in our business, it's come on the backside of those types of experiences. Is like, do I want to still have this outcome happen, or do we want to be bigger and better? So now I've got to get uncomfortable and get past some of these limiting beliefs. I think for people that are visionaries, I'll speak for myself. I have limiting beliefs about my ability to integrate systems and operations, right? I've told myself that's not what I'm strong at. I've told myself I've got to hire somebody to do it. I've said whatever excuse you want to come up with, right?
Yeah,
and it's just a limiting belief, and it's not brain surgery what we're doing. It's literally just forcing yourself to sit down, document the process, and then go hire somebody, train them, and have enough trust in your ability to transfer your skills to somebody else. And you're not going to close every single deal, and sometimes things are going to fall through the cracks, but the sooner you adopt that attitude and say, hey, this is important enough that we need to change, the sooner you're going to see your business grow. Because if you keep doing the same thing, the outcome that you're going to get is always going to be the same.
Yeah, and it's easy to tell yourself that, and that's kind of the downside of these personality tests, right? Like, oh, you're a maverick. Oh, you're a high D. Oh, you aren't good at that. Bro, humans are so malleable, and you will do what needs to get done. Right? And I used to tell myself that. Then over the last little while with this ERC company, like, I'm setting up all the operations. Right? And it was just, I used to tell myself, oh, you can't do it. And then it's like, well, we got to do it. Like, it has to be done. And so it just gets done. And so
for people like us, dude. And for people like us that have struggled with that and have overcome it, we've already got a track record that we can look back on, right? It's like my business is completely different than even what it was 2 years ago, right? We've made all these different hires. We've experienced all this growth, and it's because we've committed to doing it. So every time you feel yourself having that limiting thought, you've got to stop and be like, hey, no, look at the track record of the last 2 years. We've made some really good strides. So let's just stay in that lane and build off that momentum and keep moving forward. So, yeah, I mean,
one thing that I think is a great tip for people is when you are hiring people, you need to let them know that you are a startup and they will be wearing multiple hats. And that way they come into it knowing that. And you should approach it that way too. You have to be very clear, like, hey, we're a startup. I expect you to make mistakes, but don't make them twice. But you are going to be wearing multiple hats for a long time, but there's a lot of room to grow.
Here's the analogy. This is the analogy that I use, dude. And every single interview for somebody, I say this. I say, working for my company, it's going to feel like we're fixing the plane while it's in midair, right? So that can be fun sometimes, and that can be scary sometimes. But the flip side to that is, if you see something wrong, we don't have to go through 10 layers of management to try to get a decision made, right? Like, you can just come to me and tell me what we need to do, and then that's it. And if I want to make a change, we can make it there on the spot. So we don't have all of that red tape like I experienced in corporate America, which was so frustrating to me. But it's scary, dude, because sometimes it's going to feel like all you're doing is putting out a million fires every single day, and we're just running around in circles.
Yeah. I use the analogy with the internship program. We're riding the bike while we're building it. And I think, dude, the reality is when you're building out processes and figuring out what systems to use, like, it's actually really difficult to document it. Even though it might be in your head, you're just so used to doing it. And maybe you've become an expert at it. You're really highly skilled. It's still difficult to get that on paper. It can be hard to articulate those steps and processes. So, I mean, what have you guys done to kind of work through that and get in the right headspace to do it? Because I know I've been building out some new processes recently, and sometimes I'm just not in the mood to do it. Like, I'm not in the right headspace to sit there and write down these 10 steps that all have their own like paragraph or page each, right? With all these little sub steps and outcomes that could possibly happen. But then I just kind of have to force myself to get in it. So what have you guys done to kind of like just push through that barrier and say, you know what, I got to document this and do it. I got to get it done.
I've got a good answer. For that one. And this is something that, what changed me. So 5 years ago, or excuse me, I'd say 2 years ago, I was 5 years into the business, and we made a big shift from how we were running our business day to day. So we had built out a team of agents, right? And so we were trying to do the model similar to like how Keller Williams does it, where there's a mega agent and then there's a team of agents underneath. And then that was going to be my dispositions team. So those leads would come in and we would filter them to them. We were all in an office. And I found myself after 3 years of building that out, just feeling like it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like I wanted to do. I was getting pulled too much onto the retail side of the business. And I really wanted to focus on the investment side. And I decided to just kind of walk away from that. And I wanted to rebuild something that was just focusing on the investment side. And so I ended up hiring a coach, and I spent $20,000 for 6 months of somebody that had experience building out systems for an investment business, because I had basically, it felt like I had taken like 2 or 3 steps back. And so I was struggling with that because the team was functioning, right? It wasn't like we weren't doing deals. It was working. You know what I mean? It was like, it was working. We were doing deals. Everything that I wanted was happening. It just deep down, it didn't feel like the business that I had initially set out to build. So that's why I talked about at the beginning, having clarity on what the hell are you trying to do? I didn't want to be in an office every day, dude. You know what I mean? Like, and I was going into a brokerage office every day and we were doing trainings and coachings and all these things. And 50% of it was on the agent side of the business, dude. And I was like, we had gone through COVID, then we had come back to the office and I just felt like, I don't want to be here, dude. This is not where I want to be. And so for me, I knew it was important enough and I knew myself enough that I actually couldn't do what Dean was doing, right? Because you know what's crazy? I spent that money, and shout out to my coach. His name is Jerry Green, and he did a great job. And we basically just took his playbook and implemented all this stuff. Jerry's systems are really dialed in, and we just modeled everything that he did. And he has a great way of delivering it that worked really well for me. But the crazy part is, it's not like I didn't really know what I needed to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I needed help in certain areas, and there were some things that were very impactful. But when you zoom out and you look at like, here's what you did, it's just basically what we're talking about today. Okay, we created a process around sales and acquisitions, and we had clearly defined roles for who was going to be doing what. We held everybody accountable. We trained them. And it's like, I knew that I needed to do that at some level, but I needed the accountability of paying somebody money and talking to them every week, because I wasn't going to go on my call with Jerry on Friday and be like, sorry, Jerry, I didn't do what you told me to do, dude, you know, because I've been being lazy or whatever. And sometimes that's what we need to do, guys. You need to pay for that, not only for that accountability, but you're also paying your coach to help compress everything and just be like, here you go. I don't have time to go back on YouTube and figure all of this stuff out on my own, right? I just want the roadmap delivered to me, and I need accountability and help with the implementation. And that's what you're getting with that type of coaching program.
For me, dude, it was, and I've had to learn a lot about, I just set aside a certain amount of time and like, bro, this is systems time.
Yep.
Like, my phone is off. No one come talk to me. This is like the stuff that feels like work, right? Generally, when we're on the phone doing deals, that doesn't really feel like work. Sometimes if it is, I know I got to do admin work. I got to bang out these systems so we can get it done. It's like, all right, so I got these 3 hours. This is dedicated to this. I got to get this done. And I write it down at the beginning of the week. What do I need to get done this week? Like, what is an actionable step that I'm going to do? It's like working on the business that is going to move that business forward, right? And it's a big shift at the beginning because you're always doing it. But then there's going to be a lot going on. And now it'll be different stuff that may take a long time. Like, yeah, bro, we're building out this entire process. Bro, this might be a 3-month thing, but that's okay, right? But so it's for the first couple hours of my day, it is on a computer building something out.
Yep.
Recording myself doing something. And that's how I've gotten past that. And another thing, it's okay when systems break. It just means you're growing.
Yep.
Right? Because hopefully your systems are breaking. But the same stuff that you're doing right now will not be the same stuff you're doing later. Hopefully it does break. But I'd say for me, Dino, the biggest thing was, and I kind of got this from Hormozy, of just actually sitting down, no phone, no nothing. This is the task that needs to be done. And I think this is the hardest thing for most people who are like us, who are the visionaries, is sitting down and doing computer shit. It's easy to talk
to sit down.
Yeah. It's easy to talk to people on the phone.
Easier to talk, easier to do. Yeah.
It's hard to do the computer shit, at least for me.
Yep. You got to give yourself some patience
set.
And some grace too, dude. Like, I mean, you can't, nothing that you do right now, you're not going to see the fruits of any work that you put in now, building out a process or a system for, I'd say 90 days at the absolute soonest, but the real results are probably going to be more like 5 or 6 months down the road. So you 100%. Have to suspend, you have to give yourself patience and let all of the work that you're doing now actually bear fruit. So you have to realize that if you go down this road, it's going to be something that's going to pay off a little bit later on. But even I look back to when we started with Jerry and the team that we had and the stuff that we were doing and what we're doing now. And it's like a night and day difference, man. It really is. Like, our team looks completely different.
Exactly.
It's funny. We joke about it with our team sometimes. And it's when it was like Morgan and Jade and I, and we were just running around like crazy, not doing, you know what I mean? Like, having no idea what we were doing. It felt like, yeah, dude. So yeah, give
How do you
yourself some
overcome
grace
it,
and some
Dino?
patience.
What's that?
How do you overcome it? Because you are, I call you Captain America because I feel like you're a systems king, bro. You fucking love Google Sheets.
Yeah, no, I think, like we talked about, it's one of those things where you just got to block off the time. But when you're hustling, you almost have no time. And that's the last thing on the priority list. Because, dude, we got, just for an example, we got deals flying right now. And we're busier than we've, as busy as we've ever been. And it's like time to work on a process. Like, dude, I'm just getting these deals sold. Like, I'm focused on getting these to the finish line. That's the last thing I'm worried about. But at the end of the day, those are the things that you got to work on your business to get things to actually move forward, to get to the result you want, right? If we're talking about time freedom, you got to hand over this knowledge to someone else. You got to train someone else. And that's not going to happen on its own. It's just not. No matter how bad, no matter how much you think that person's going to want to get better, they might go out and learn something on their own, but chances are it's not going to be what you want to train them on and the way that you want them to do it. And I've done that. I've done it the wrong way, where I've just let them go and work on it themselves. And then I'll go listen to calls and I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, this is not our process. This is not how we do it. And you have to course correct that. That's why training is so important. Reestablishing how we do things. This is our process. This is what we expect. And when we finally implemented truly the systems in our business, things work like clockwork. We get messages to give specific, like, just to talk about, just to briefly touch on our sales process. Like, when we get a new lead comes in, I know right away because there's a request for the ARV to my partner. My partner knows it is his role to run the ARV. It's not me. It's not the acquisition manager. My partner is responsible for that. He's now on it. He responds quickly. Now he's confident that that's what his role is. So he's prepared and ready to take action on it. And then before they make an offer, they fill out our deal analyzer and they submit it in another text thread that we have in our iPhone messages. And we see what the offer is going to be. We have an opportunity to comment on it and give feedback. Like, there's now an exact process we go through, and we're getting better deals. Our average profit's going up, and we're getting whale deals, right? 100,000 plus profit deals, which we weren't before, because we were just letting them go and they just wanted to get another deal and we're willing to make $5,000 on it. No, we're not looking to do deals like that. Will we do a deal like that? Sure, but that's not our deal. That's not our goal. So here's our process. Here's how we do it. Here's how we run the numbers. And until we did that, things really moved the needle once we did.
I would say, just as we're wrapping up this talking point, I feel like you have to understand the time freedom that you create by establishing a new system and a process. Your time needs to get quickly replaced with a higher level task, right? So just like you used to be the one in there closing deals, as soon as you pull yourself out of that, the task needs to level up. It's not necessary. Like, Dean and I and Stratton are not sitting on the beach and just like watching deals come flying in. You know what I'm saying? We're taking the time that we're buying back from our system and we're doing stuff like this. We're focusing on other initiatives that are bigger, right, for our personal brands or our business brands, right? And so you're always going to be buying back time, I feel like, and then replacing it with a higher level task that allows you to look and view at the business at a higher level. Dean said, working on the business instead of being in the business every day. And that's what you're going to be doing with the time that you buy back initially.
Bro, all right. So I have a couple books that I think will help people out a ton. For those of you guys who are just getting started, I always recommend like Unique Ability 2.0. That lets you know like where you're skilled at, right? And so let's say my partner Chase in Call Magicians and me are completely different humans. I don't know if Chase has left his house in 2 years, right? He doesn't like talking to people. Like, he likes just like being on his computer and doing operation shit. Completely different than me, right? And so that lets you know like you're not trying to fit yourself into a round hole. and you're a square, right? That one's really big. Who Not How is great for delegation. Traction is a great business book. That'll be good. Measure What Matters as far as you're going to go for at KPIs. That book helped me out a ton. And then, Dan Martell's new book is fire. Buy Back Your Time is an amazing book, and Dan Martell is like a 9-figure entrepreneur, and his is really good, covering absolutely everything we talked about. Did I have any other books? No, Dan Martell's is the last one, and Dan Martell's book goes as really detailed in the systems, time delegation, and again, like building what you want, right? Not building an absolute prison for yourself, because now, as you keep growing, you'll start to see like, man, you're super stressed because you have all this on your plate and you just don't pass it off, and it leads to drinking problems or whatever it is. And that's a real thing. All right, we're going to bring our main man on.
Let's bring on our guest today, man. This topic, we're going to definitely have to spend more time. I think it'd be cool if we go into some of our own specific processes on another podcast here, because there's just a lot of juiciness there. But today, let's get in. We've got another guest here who submitted a deal for the Deal Champs podcast. Very excited to bring him on. He is early in his career. He started in the middle of last year. He's actually one of my coaching students, which makes it even more fun. We got Mr. Brian Valencia. What's up, Brian?
Hey, what's up, guys? Pleasure to be on here.
Thanks for coming on,
man.
bro.
Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you.
Well, dude, I'm excited to talk about your deal today, because this deal, if you guys don't get motivated from this to get off your ass and go get the deal, I don't know what will, because this story, it motivates me. This is why, guys, you got to be networking with people, both experienced and people getting started out. If this doesn't get you motivated, you don't have a pulse, because what Brian had to overcome on this deal was pretty wild. So let's go ahead and bring up the deal. Let's get right into it. So this was a wholesale deal, okay? The deal was sourced off of Propstream, auction.com. We'll get in the story on that. The deal was in Visalia, California, my hometown. And to break down the deal itself, the purchase price was $198,500. The sales price was $223,500, making a net profit of $25,000. So sweet deal, a deal to be excited about. The short story, which Brian will get into all the details, this was a foreclosure property. The seller had originally told Brian he had figured it all out. And turns out property continued to stay on the foreclosure list, was coming to an auction date. It was really hard to get a hold of the seller until days before the auction date. So Brian had to act fast, had to think on his feet, had to take action, didn't take no for an answer, ran through the freaking wall. So, dude, tell us about this deal, man.
Perfect.
Tell us the story.
So I found this lead on Propstream. This was in October where I made initial contact. So I pulled the foreclosure list. I skip traced this property in particular. I skip traced it and made contact. So when I made contact, I actually made contact with the father of the gentleman who owned the property. So I told him, what was going on. He gave me his son's number. So now I got the actual seller's number. I reached out to him. I believe he was at work. So he kind of, it was a quick little talk, hung up. I called him again later on that afternoon. And, we were talking on the phone, but he didn't seem too motivated to hear what I was, talking to him about. He told me to call him back in a week. So a week goes by. I call him again. I said, hey, Mr. Seller, this is what I can do for you. Let me help you. And he said he had it figured out and to basically go kick rocks. I was like, all righty. So at that moment, I basically put this lead as a dead lead, even though I believe I followed up with him in a monthly basis, but never made contact till fast forward up to mid-January, right? I'm going through auction.com. That's where I source some of my leads from, and boom, I see the same address. I'm like, oh, look at that. It's actually going to go to auction in 5 days, in less than a week. So I go back in my notes. I get that phone number. I give the guy a call. I'm like, hey, Mr. Seller, I don't even remember me. My name is Brian Valencia. We spoke about your property. As soon as I said that, he hung up, called him back again. He hung up. So this was on a Thursday. The auction was the following Tuesday. Now, I sent that seller a message, which I have here. Let me go ahead and grab it. And I believe this text message was the reason why he ended up reaching back out to me days later. I'll read it to you guys.
I love this message.
So I said, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm sure I ain't the first person that has contacted you today. I simply want to help you get an extension from the auction and get some money in your pocket. I am in Visalia. If you want to meet in person, if you have any questions, give me a call. Right. So that was Thursday. Didn't hear anything. Thursday, Friday, Saturday goes by. Now we're on Sunday, midday. Right. I get a text message, random number. And it said, what can you do? Right. And then I looked it up and it was that seller. And then I discussed with him that I could push an extension date and this is what I could do for him. And he said, perfect. Well, let's do it. Now, by the end of that day, I had the contract signed, right, for an amount.
Now, what day was that?
So that was on Sunday. So Sunday afternoon, I get the property under contract. Correct, on Sunday. And at this moment, the seller was very, very cautious, very worried. He actually told me, something, right, that kind of, resonates and sinks with me. He said, don't screw me over, even though I had already explained the process. It's like he was such in a bad situation that he didn't want things to get any worse for him, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, man, I'm only trying to help you. This is going to be the process. Everything's going to be legitimate. I'm really trying to help you. So this was Sunday afternoon. I get the contract signed, and then out of nowhere, I remember that Monday was a holiday and the title company was closed. And then I lost it. I said, it was a great opportunity. Now, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do to push an extension? The auction was on Tuesday at 1 p.m., right, at the county. How was I going to push the extension without even having Monday, right? So Sunday and Monday, title doesn't work. Now, at that time and place, I didn't have my escrow officer, her personal phone number. So I go on Instagram, I send her a message. I asked her, hey, are you guys open tomorrow? She said no. I said, hey, can I have your phone number? I have a deal that I just got under contract. Can you please give me a call? So we started working on it Sunday night. I gave her all the details. She told me what we had to do. We jumped. So now we're on Monday morning. Monday morning, I'm just sitting on my desk trying to figure out what I could do because the seller didn't have the information that my escrow officer needed, right, to start the process. So I was trying to figure out how I could get a hold of the trustee. Now, I ended up going back to the auction website. I actually found the trustee's information, gave him a call, and it was the nicest lady ever. She gave me all the details that I needed. She gave me the loan number, the mortgage lender, every little detail that I needed. She gave it to me. I grabbed that information. I sent it over to my escrow officer. We updated the contract because now we knew what the payoff was, right, which was substantially more than we initially anticipated. So we updated the contract. I asked Dean for the proof of funds as well. The bank was asking for that. And I put all the other documents together, send it over to my escrow officer. And she said, all right, as soon as I go in at Tuesday at 8 a.m, I'm going to submit all the paperwork. And so now Tuesday morning, 8 a.m., I was up like at 5 a.m. that day. I was just waiting for the 8 a.m. period. I sent her the last document she needed. We submit everything by 8 a.m. and then that's it, nothing. So I didn't hear anything from 8 a.m. to probably 11, didn't hear anything. I kept bugging her, hey, have you heard anything, from the trustee? Are they going to postpone it? What's going on? Nope, they wouldn't be picking up. So at that moment, I knew it was such a great deal. So I started looking for alternatives, right? So then I started, calling around town to see if I could possibly file for bankruptcy for the seller. And I was willing to pay for that out of my pocket. The seller was actually going to file bankruptcy regardless. So they were actually on board with the idea. So I ended up calling the seller and I said, hey, can we meet at this place at noon? Right at noon, can you be there? Because I don't think I'm going to be able to get the extension. We're going to have to file for bankruptcy to stop the auction process. We only have, 2 hours left. So before I left my house, I gave, Claudia from Placer Title one last call. And nope, nothing, haven't heard back. So I'm there at noon outside the lawyer's office with the seller. I'm telling the seller, hey, give me 20 more minutes. I'm waiting for the phone to ring, right? I'm really trying to avoid walking in that office. Let's see, let's start praying. So nothing. We're at 12:30. Nothing has happened. My phone hasn't ring. I'm like, all right, let's start going inside. So as soon as we started going inside, I told them what I was about. They already knew that I was coming in, and I started having some issues with them. They wanted me to pay them cash to start the process. I thought it was a little, sketchy. And then we were just going back and forth. Well, the time was running out. Right, they wanted me to drive to the bank and get the money. I'm like, we need to start the process. We have 20 minutes left at this time, right? It's 12:40. The auction's at 1 o'clock. We got 20 minutes. Now, we just started the paperwork or whatnot, and they were giving me issues back and forth. And then finally, I want to say this was 12:50. I give Claudia one more call. I said, hey, Claudia, this is Brian. I'm right here at the attorney's office. I'm ready to file for bankruptcy for this property. Any updates? She goes, let me check my email. And boom, she checked her email. We got the postponement for a whole nother month, and that was it. 10 minutes before the auction, we got it postponed.
That's nuts, dude.
Yeah, so that was a crazy
wire.
Yeah.
So I didn't think about this. We had talked about the whole bankruptcy office, like giving you a hard time. Literally said you had to pay them cash, and it was like $3,000, right? Like it was
correct.
Pretty good amount of money they wanted.
Wild, bro.
Yeah,
that's
they
super
wanted
wild.
cash.
It didn't click until now. The only rational thing I could think of that might be legitimate, maybe they asked for cash because if someone's coming in to file for bankruptcy and writes you a check, do you think that check's gonna cash?
Yeah, that's very true. Credit
probably a high bounce rate. But when I first heard it, I was like, dude, how sketch is that? These bankruptcy lawyers are literally like, no, show us the cash, man. Show us the cash. I thought that was sketch, but maybe it makes sense.
Yeah,
dude, I think, Brian, what I love about your story, man, is that we're always talking about this, but this is another perfect example of just figuring it out as you go. You know what I mean? Like not knowing who to call, what trustee to call. You're just following the very next step, which is I need to get the seller on board, right? And you worked your ass off doing that. You didn't go down some rabbit hole trying to learn about like stopping foreclosures or doing all this stuff, or like you just were just focused on the very, very next step that you needed to do, which was get the seller in a space where he trusted you enough to even open up and be like ready to do business with you, right? That was it. And then you do like above and beyond after that, right? You get Claudia's information, you DM her on Instagram, you're like, hey, right. I know it's Sunday, but here's what's going on. Like, can you help me, right? And that's like every step after that is basically the same thing, right? You didn't have to worry about it. You got with people that knew the process. I'm sure Claudia helped give you some insight on what you needed to do. She said, here's what I'm going to do. You need to take care of this. And you just took that ball and ran with it, man. So I think that's how you get rewarded in this business, by learning how to solve complex and difficult problems for people. And I think it's awesome, dude. And you definitely deserve what you got out of this deal, dude. It's a great story.
Well, and that is, bro, it's such a true story for a lot of the people at the beginning, right? They try and take in all this knowledge. Like I remember one time I talked to a dude. He was like, well, I haven't been on the phones because I've been studying. I was like, bro, studying for what?
Yeah.
Like, let's just go out. Let's go out there and talk to these people, bro.
Yeah.
Like, just call someone else when some shit pops up. And that's exactly what you did, bro.
So true, man.
You just
so many people
like, hey,
I
man,
talk to, and they're saying, I'm not going after deals yet. I'm gonna spend the next 6 months learning. And it's like, oh man, you got to learn by taking action.
Yep.
You're not going to figure it out by just learning. Do you need to learn information? Do you need to take in new ways of thinking? You absolutely do, because you don't have the information when you're first starting out, and you should always be learning. I'm constantly learning. I know every single one of us on here are constantly learning because we know we don't know it all. But I think the best way to learn is by taking action. And every part of this story, like you said, Jason, it was just what I was so impressed about is your ability to be resourceful and go not take the fact that it was Sunday, escrow's closed on Sunday. Oh, it's a holiday. Oh no, what can I do? Like, you took action on Sunday and Monday, put in the work with Claudia. You had everything prepared and ready to be sent first thing Tuesday morning. You had an auction, a property going to auction stopped the day of, half of a day before auction. I mean, that's freaking wild. There's not too many stories that are common like that. That's pretty darn hard to do. And you had to have everything to a T perfect, ready to go. You had to have everything with escrow dialed in and ready to have their attention to send it out first thing, get the trustees' information. I sent you the proof of funds when you asked for it. Like, you had to have everything dialed in and sent. Otherwise, that would not have happened. Just wouldn't have.
Let me ask you a question, Brian. So I feel like the common denominator in almost 100% of the people that I meet that find success in this business is they have this trait that we all discussed right now, the ability just to focus on the next step without knowing what every other step is. I mean, I would say 100% of the people, right? Especially at the beginning. So what do you think it was about you, right, that allowed you to do that? Right? To not worry and not get caught up in like, I don't understand how this works. Why was your situation and what was it that was going through your head, Brian, that allowed you to just do that, focus on the next thing without worrying about everything else?
You know, it's not every day that you get such a hot lead, right? That the sellers wanted to work with you, you get it on their contract. So it was an opportunity that I had to take, right, towards the last minute. I had to give it everything I had in order for me to take advantage of the opportunity that I was given. So, you know, it was me out of everybody else that had spoken with that seller, right, which went on for months. It was me who he messaged. I was the person who needed to figure this out. If anybody was going to figure it out, it was going to be me, and I was willing to do everything that had to be done. I was hungry, and more to some of the question, I was simply hungry, and it was an opportunity that I knew I had to take advantage of, right? I wasn't too concerned with the outcome. If it didn't turn out the way I wanted it, then, I mean, it was okay. It was a learning experience, but I knew the opportunity was there, and I just needed to, capitalize on it.
I love it.
Correct.
Bro, fire. I just love the massive action. Like, if there's one thing you can take away from this, it is massive action, nonstop. And we talked about it earlier today. You're building the plane as it's going down, and nothing changes. Like, if you think you're going to know it all as you get to doing tons of deals, you're not, because now you're building some new shit. And it's like, all right, bro, we're just going to get it
And
done.
I'm sure you felt the plane nosediving, dude, a few times throughout this process, bro. Like, I felt it nosediving just as you were reading it, dude. And that's a scary, scary feeling, dude. And to have the hunger, I heard you say hunger, I think that's really good. And you have this desire that is stronger than your, probably there's part of you that wants to go back to just being comfortable and convincing yourself, right? Like, hey, you know what? This deal is probably not for me. It's not going to work. You could have convinced yourself that this deal was not going to work out so many different times. And your hunger and desire to be successful was stronger than you willing to just negotiate with yourself and say, hey, you know what? This one's not for me, dude. And you have to get yourself in a space mentally where you feel like there's no plan B. I honestly believe that, man. And you know, some people, like with me, you hear about getting to like rock bottom and it's like, I don't have any other options. Other people, I don't believe that you have to be in that space, but I believe mentally you've got to like create that reality sometimes where it's like, damn, my back is up against the wall and we've got to make this happen. And I'm making it happen. No matter what, there's just no other options. And I could sense that from you as you're telling the story that you aren't going to let this one go, man. And now the money is cool. Like, the money is the good part, but here's one thing that we've all learned, right? The experience that you got, dude, and the confidence that you're going to be able to transfer to the very next seller that you get in this situation, you're going to be able to overcome every single one of their objections immediately because you know exactly what needs to happen now. So the fact that you've got this as experience is 10 times more valuable than any money that you made from this deal, because the next time and then the next time after that, you're just going to be able to be like, nope, here's what's going to happen. I've worked with a number of sellers in your situation. Here's exactly what we do. Here's exactly how we're going to handle the process. And when you get really good at transferring that confidence to the seller, that's when you start gaining a lot of momentum with your deal, man. So the experience is going to be invaluable for you.
Yeah, it was just, it was your will to overcome, right? And I think it was because of your will, it forced your mindset to be aligned to make it happen. Because like you said, Jason, like, you can't help but be fearful as these new obstacles present themselves. And there was like a handful of ones you didn't even tell them the story after you got the extension. Like, there was continuous obstacles that you had to work through and mentally kind of figure out and determine, like, what am I going to do here? But it was the ability to overcome that, to believe that you could do it, they continue to give you confidence through the deal. And like you said, also, Jason, each time you come to the next seller, your confidence is going to be at a different place to where you're able to just take it on and navigate those obstacles so that you can get better and bigger deals and more deals. So I just love the story, man.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have to state that this is the reason why it's very important to build relationships, and definitely having a mentor in this business is very important. Without those relationships that I had built with Claudia and previous deals that I've done, I don't think out of the blue she would have been able to help me as closely as she did. Right, working on a Sunday and Monday that there were her days off, she was on the phone with me all day, right? And definitely Dean was very critical in this, in this deal. He gave me, not only did he actually provide the proof of funds for me, he provided very important advice that I needed throughout the process. So definitely.
And that borrowed confidence and belief system from a mentor, I think is huge. Without Alan, bro, at the beginning, right? Because like you just don't have that confidence of the back end of that dude support, and you're like, bro, you're fine. This is a fucking deal. Let's go.
Just
get that
do
shit
this.
Done.
That's it.
Just do this.
That's it, man.
We got it. You get to borrow all that belief from your mentor, which I think is massive.
Yeah, your network is huge in that situation. So Dean being in your corner and being able to kind of shortcut the guidance and assistance that you need, and Claudia too, having a prior track record with her, she's probably not responding to your DM if you've never done a deal with her before on Sunday, right? And you're just some random guy, right? So yeah, I don't think that that's happening either, man. So all of those things that kind of happen for a reason. That's what I believe, dude. Like I believe that you're part of Dean's program. You had this deal with all of those things needed to happen first before you're ready to even do this deal, right? This opportunity, I don't think you're ready to do it until those other things have actually transpired, man. And so all of this experience builds on top of each other. This deal is the experience that you need and is the building blocks for the next one that you do that's like this, because this won't be the last foreclosure property that you do. And it's just constant progression from there, man.
Yeah, definitely.
What was your biggest takeaway, Brian?
My biggest takeaway, I believe, just the learning experience. Just the learning experience that a deal's not over till it's actually over. When Sunday night, when I completely forgot that Monday was a holiday. Once, one of my family members told me, hey, tomorrow is a holiday. I said, what? And I kind of lost that. I said, I get this amazing opportunity. What am I going to do? Right. So for like 5 minutes, I kind of panicked. And then I said, well, all right, well, let's get to work. And that's when I reached out to Claudia, and then I got some information. And then, the following day, got to work again, got the additional information, because I knew there was a little window, right? There was a little bit of light in the tunnel that I could see that it was a possibility. And I mean, those 6 hours, those 6 hours of day, that was enough to get it extended. So my biggest takeaway was definitely just having the courage to, do it step by step and actually being able to, progress, as efficiently as I did. Definitely. So the experience, above all, was the most important takeaway for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on. What a great story, guys. I hope this was super valuable for you. If you guys like this story, make sure you like it. Throw some love at Brian. It takes a lot to come on the show and share your story. If you guys have a deal and you want it highlighted, make sure to submit your deal. We'll put the link inside of the comments so you guys can have your deal highlighted on the podcast. Let's see what else. If you guys... Can
we answer this dude's question? Give the audience some more gas?
We can. This one's a big one. You want to talk about it? So here we go. Question from a mole here. He owns a hotel properties and a few gas stations here in California. He wanted to extrapolate his business to bigger levels, so he got introduced to opening up a business credit line. Can you tell me more about that?
You and I have business lines of credit, Dean, right? I know. I mean, here's been my experience for the person that commented this. An unsecured business line of credit, a lot of it is going to depend on your banking relationship with that institution, right? And so I have not personally found success doing that with larger, big name banks, right? So like your B of A's, your Wells Fargo's, a lot of those types of banks, they're not going to do it. So what we did was we moved our high activity, high balance accounts to smaller local banks, right? And we started just establishing those relationships there, right? And transitioning a bank when you've got businesses the size that you have is not going to be an easy thing, but it's probably going to be necessary and required. I bank with Fresno First, and we have, a banking relationship with them. Dean, I can't remember where you guys have one at, but I think it's Bank of Sierra. So I think it's starting with banks like that specialize in business. Get your high activity, high balance accounts over there. Show them like, hey, here's the volume that we're doing, right? And then sit down and talk with your banker and say, even before you move over, just say, here's what our normal balance is over the course of a year. I'm thinking about moving. This is what I'm interested in. Is this a product or a service that you guys would do it? Because ultimately, it's an interview process just like anybody else that's going to be on your team. I think you interview your bankers the same way that you do your CPAs, the same way that you do your accountants, the same way that you do everybody else that is on your team, and make sure that your guys' goals are aligned, right? And if there's alignment there, then go from there. But that's what I would suggest.
Yeah. So here's my 2 tactical pieces of advice. If you're wanting to get an unsecured line of credit, which is the best way to do it, right? Don't know your asset situation, how much equity there is or not, but unsecured is certainly the most desired form of getting a credit line. The best way to get in the door with one of these banking relationships is through a referral. That's how I got mine. Mine came from another local guy using a small local bank, Bank of the Sierra. He introduced me to the senior business, whatever his title was, walked me in the door through an email, and I just sat down, brought my P&L in, showed it to him, and he's like, well, without any other assets being tied to it, strictly unsecured, without doing any other, inspections of the business, tax returns, anything, we can get you $250,000. And I said, great. Where do I sign? He's like, give me 24 hours and I'll get it together. And that was it. Literally, if I would have walked in by myself and asked for a meeting with the business person, I would have gotten nowhere as fast, not even close. But because it came from a referral, from a trusted relationship, someone who has done millions of dollars of credit with this particular person, he walked me in the door and instantly got me what I was looking for. Now, if you don't have relationships, the other strategy that I learned, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but I love this strategy, is go into the bank with an offer for a credit line. You're offering them the ability to give you a credit line. It's a shift in kind of the mindset around it, rather than you asking or requesting. I'm looking to request. No, I'm looking to offer an opportunity for a credit line. Go in with all of your paperwork put together, a full list of your assets in your portfolio, a P&L of your businesses. You have everything prepared in a manila folder. You look legit. You're ready to go. You have maybe even a 1-pager of yourself background, right? If you go in and you have a stack of 10 of those, and on the front of it, you have Bank of the Sierra, you got Fresno First, you got Citizens Bank, you got all those small local businesses, and you show up to that appointment and you're sorting through, you already know what you're doing, but you're sorting through, looking for the one for that particular bank. Oh, here's yours. And they can see, the other banks are on there, and you're making it clear that you're going to each bank and you have everything ready to go. You're going to look way more legitimate, and they're going to want your business most likely. Right. So I think if you can do one of those 2 things, then you're going to put yourself in a good position. And I can say that, I just bought a property cash using my business line of credit. And I think everybody should go for it, but it starts at the small local banks.
And Henry has some good info on this too. Henry Washington has an actual course.
I love his strategy too.
As far as working with small local banks, bro, that was fire, because I don't have any lines of credit. I told you it was a good question to answer, bro.
It was,
yeah. So hopefully that was helpful, and we'll appreciate the question. Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. Submit your deals. Do you have the link, or we're just going to tell them to reach out to us?
We're going to put it in the chat. Yeah.
Okay. Put it in the chat. Please, please, please follow us on Instagram at StratDaddy, at Dean Rogers Real Estate, at Jason Pritchard. And do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It should be like down right there. And then also, if you are listening to this on any podcast platform, please go give it a 5-star review. Go do all that stuff. And if it brought you any value, share it on your social media and share it with your friends.
Yep.
That would be a huge, huge, huge favor for us. We're going to continue to bring you guys so much great information. Like that line of credit stuff right there, you aren't going to really hear that anywhere else. And that was free. And that was a pretty high level question, in my opinion.
Yep.
All right, guys. Do you have anything else? Anything else to leave the people with?
Another solid show. Brian, congrats on your deal, buddy. That's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for
Appreciate it.
joining us, man.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning
Thanks,
in.
guys.
We'll talk
All
to you
right,
guys
guys.
next week.
Catch you on the next one.